There's also the aspect of departing. It's showing that we're going away from engaging in conflicts on a preventative basis. We've heard that one of the reasons for us being there is that we were there to prevent any further problem there or to our interests in the world from happening again. Well, that's like taking action in a wartime setting to prevent further violence from taking place again. Us departing would downplay that and would show that we really don't want to use preventative wars to keep going in these kind of conflicts. Another issue of us departing, or another reason would be that we're trying to achieve our objectives in an other than a bellicose or warlike fashion. Obviously, if we left, we'd look for other forms of solutions. Iraq would also have to look to other forms of expression in order to resolve this terrible conflict that's going on there. And another philosophical reasoning that is connected to us departing there is, does might make right? That's a philosophical concept discussed by Plato in his dialogues. I believe it's in the Republic. Thrasymachus was one of the persons in the dialogue, and the question is, does might make right? And let's take might as a form of military power and financial power combined in what we have is the military-industrial complex. Now, if you have a very powerful military-industrial complex and it's more powerful or of a greater strength than your neighbors or another countries, does that mean that you have the right? And that's a philosophical question. I believe that us departing from there goes back to that question, and it's subject to reevaluation, and we're asking ourselves, does might make right in resolving questions of a national and also international type of arena? And that's very important, because that's a philosophical concept that I think we all need to understand so we can communicate it to our representatives and they can have a better grasp of what that really means. Now, us departing from the country would also really send a clear and concise message to the Iraqi authorities and people that they must do something in their own sovereign context to defend themselves. I mean, realistically, how far and how long and how much practical measures are required by us or any other form of country to maintain a defensive position for them? It's already gone on 4 years. It would really spark the Iraqis into primarily thinking that they have the responsibility to maintain themselves, to provide protection, and to bring about some form of practical application of a civilized society themselves. I think our departure would also act as a form of atmosphere that could break down the cycle of continuing violence. It might be that us getting out from the scene will allow themselves to decide in a more effective fashion how they can reconstruct matters in their own terms and conditions without any influence or imposition or presence of any powers, ourselves and any other powers that are there. So us going out really may allow them to make their own decisions, and that may cut off the cycle of violence that's been happening. Also, us going out would probably give them a sense of urgency and tell them that they too have exigent circumstances, so that us going out or departing from that country may tell them, look, we've got to wake up. We must unify and have a leadership role here that will guide us into the future and help stabilize the country in all particulars, because what is there in giving them stability now, it won't be there for forever. So it could really wake them up and make their leadership come to some unifying, harmonious direction. It would help them immensely. We have here the us going out would also help. It is believed that they form a national identity. When you hear the news in the press, on the internet, and what's going in the journalistic publications now, you hear an absence of any Iraqi national identity. They need to identify themselves as Iraqis and avoid any sectarian or faction or outlaw coalition or combination that they may have. They must have a national pride or national identity. This would help them immensely, because this will give them a strength and resolve to form some kind of leadership capabilities and put them into the future with strength and some form of peace and resolve. So if we're departing, then it would give them more reason to say, we've got to form our own national identity, and it could really probably spark them into doing so. We also have the area of diplomacy dialogue. If they knew that we weren't there, they'd have to introduce some form of diplomacy and dialogue amongst themselves and also the other adjoining powers. You also have the equilibrium of the political balance there. They would, if they knew that we were going out and we departed, they would have to take the measures to bring some form of geopolitical balance there. And this would take diplomacy, this would take dialogue. They would really have to take on this action themselves. Also, we've got the idea of a national reconciliation. If they knew that another presence was leaving, or we departed precipitously or over time, they would have to form some kind of reconciliation of their problems. It would be imperative for them, because it would bring about their self-preservation type of aspects in their own psychology. They would have to exercise some form of preservation of who they are, to avoid the implosion that we talked about. And if they knew that our presence was such that we would be departing soon, or there were certain timelines given, this would really spark them into action. Now, in trying to synthesize both these points of view in the closing moments of the program, I think the audience really should think about a form of what they call harmonization. Socrates talked about how can we reconcile our government's interests with the people. And one of these is doing things that brings a form of harmony, that brings a form of goodness. The reasons to depart and the reasons to remain, some of which can be argued for both. There is an overlap for both of them. But the overall consideration that I think the viewing audience should consider here is that the Iraqis must exercise philosophical principles in the sense of dialogue formation, having this matter brought to some form of harmony. And dialogue is one of the most important processes to take. Apparently there isn't enough dialogue because there's too much fighting. And if they can only start discussing these matters, they will benefit themselves in the dialogue context. Anyway, thank you for listening. I hope that it's given you some insight, and that if you have any questions, you can email or call us. We'll be happy to discuss these matters to you, and we'll see you next time on Iraq and in its consequence. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time.